Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go Bruins.
Okay, the first item would be public comment from the board, and I just have one, and then I'll open it up to the other members of the board. I want to thank everyone who attended town meeting. It was a good attendance, and there were a lot of important decisions made. And I would just urge people who didn't attend, this is the opportunity you have to determine how your tax dollars are spent, to determine the decisions that are going to move the town forward. There's important decisions on zoning, on land acquisitions. So if you didn't attend, I would urge you to attend and get involved. And any other comments from the board?
Just want to thank everyone who participated in the debate last Wednesday night. We actually had the three selectmen candidates actually debated. We were introduced to other candidates for school committee, planning board, school, what else?
Parks and Rec.
Parks, thank you.
Right.
A lot of new faces, a lot of good people, a lot of, just good to see a lot of new faces getting involved and good to see the process working. So I want to thank the caucus for putting that on the Ledger, and it was very informative, so.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I will open it up to the public. Anyone from the public? Mr. Rogers?
Good evening. My name is Dave Rogers. I'm here with Lisa Normandin on behalf of the Turkey Hill Family Lions Club in Lunenburg, Mass. And we wanted to update you real quickly on some of the happenings within the Lions Club and ask your permission on a couple of things. And we've divided this up pretty much. And first thing I'd like to talk about is the food pantry needs that we have. Believe it or not, we service 70 families on average a month here in Lunenburg. And we are always looking for donations to help with that endeavor. And I mention that because on the 10th of May, the postal drive will take place in the town of Lunenburg. And all of the food that is gathered here in town stays in town, which is a great thing. They do a wonderful job for us. And in addition to that, I want to acknowledge with deep appreciation and sincere thanks to the Hannaford Corporation for their donation of $2,000 in gift cards. And if anybody out there in TV land feels that they would like to do something, the gift cards are a great way to do it, because we might have an abundance of green beans and we really need corn or something. So this is a way for Dave Berthium to go out and to buy what he needs. But having said that, we will accept any kind of a donation graciously and with thanks. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask those out in TV land to consider becoming a Lion, because we always need new members. It's a great way to support the community and to participate in various things within the town. And we like to think that we do quite a few things. We'd like to do more, and certainly we will strive towards that, but we do a lot of different things, so we'd like some help in that regard. Last thing I'm going to take care of, and then I'm going to turn it over to our president, is we're going to have a booth at the bonfire, which is June 21st this year at the grounds out in front of the now high school, soon to be gone high school. So we appreciate the opportunity to come before you, and I'll turn it over to our president, Lisa Normandin.
Okay, I just wanted to quickly go over a few things that are coming up. May 14th will be our next pancake breakfast, and we hold that monthly on the second Wednesday of the month. It's $2. It's 8 to 11 at the Eagle House. It's a great time. There's a lot of folks there, and the seniors really love it. On May 17th, on Election Day, we're going to hold a bake sale at the flagpole in front of the T.C. Passio School, and we're going to be having our road toll that day as well. All the proceeds are going to the food pantry. The fall road toll, we donate all that money to the Lunenburg Community Council, but this money is strictly for the food pantry. And the bake sale is going to be the same hours as the election, 7 to 5, or until we run out. An anonymous, company is going to match funds for the bake sale up to $2,000. So if anybody would like to bake, I have some flyers here. You don't have to bring it. I'll be happy to pick it up the day before or on Friday. So, and the roadblock will be 8 to 2. So as I say, if you don't want to bake and you just like to eat, or you're going to a victory party that night, I suggest you bring something to the victory party. On May 31st, we're going to hold a meat bingo. It's kind of a new thing. They hold it in Townsend at their VFW. We're going to have that 7 to 9 at the Lunenburg Sportsman's Club. We're going to have snacks, a 50-50, and you actually win meat. It's all fresh meat. It's, you know, you'll take it with you when you go, obviously, be refrigerated till someone wins. We're going to have beer and wine, provided that you approve the license at next week's meeting.
No pressure.
And lastly, on June 24th, I don't know if you've noticed in the local paper, the Ixtapa Cantina has a dine and donate program. So I contacted them, and on June 24th, which is a Tuesday, 10% of the proceeds will go to the Lions Club. So I think that's all, and if you want to visit our website, we're at lions@zoomshare.com, and I think that's about all.
We would be remiss if we didn't say thank you to each and every one of you for the support that you've given us, and to the folks in Lunenburg for all the support that they've given us at the Lions Club, realizing that all we do and all we collect and all we're able to achieve goes back to our community. So it's people helping people. And so far, we've been very successful, and we look to be even more successful. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for all.
Thank you.
That's all, folks.
Thank you both for all of your efforts. I know how hard you work in this effort.
It's Dave Berthume and this one here. I just come along for support. So yeah, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any other public comment tonight? Okay, we will jump to the first item on the agenda, which is the town treasurer collector to approve the band note sale of $309,000 for the school building construction project.
Hi, Shelley Mackay, Treasurer Collector. I'm here tonight just to ask for your approval to borrow $309,000 relative to the school feasibility study. This bond anticipation note is a renewal of the note approved at the 12/10/13 Board of Selectmen meeting. The note went out to bid on April 22nd of 2014. 3 bids were received from Eastern Bank and Century Bank. Both of those banks were at a rate of 0.55%, and Unibank at 0.60%. Eastern Bank was awarded the bid. The sale of the note will be on May 15th, 2014, and will mature on November 14th of 2014. If approved, I have the following forms that need to be signed: the certificate of town clerk, the note 532-1, and 3 copies of the certificate and covenant as to tax exempt status of the notes.
Okay, any questions from the board? Then I would accept a motion.
I would move that we approve the bond anticipation note in the amount of $309,000 proposed by the treasurer collector.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, while that is being signed, the next item on our agenda is a joint session with the Library Board of Trustees to consider the appointment of Gare Thompson to the unexpired term under the Town Charter, Section 3(1)(f), number 2. Oh, we should wait. Okay, hold on. The town manager has just cautioned me on moving that forward because it's not yet 7:15. So we will...
Just kidding.
I'm just kidding. Sorry about that. So I guess we will wait 6 minutes.
You want to wait?
Yeah. Okay, so we will wrap up discussion of town meeting. And did you have something specific you wanted to talk about?
I don't have anything specific. We usually put an item on the agenda following the meeting in case any member of the board has anything you want to discuss or say about the town meeting.
Well, I can say that I was shocked, amazed, and happy to see the Lane property pass unanimously. Again, it speaks to the quality of the work put in by the Open Space Committee, by the Open Space Negotiating Committee, the presentations of data and facts and options, and just the whole plan presented to the town. I think it spoke to a lot of different people across all kind of political outlooks, and it just made a lot of good sense. So just want to point out how well that was done, and again, thank you, Paula, and Toby, and JJ, and Brandon for all the work that went into that.
I thank you, and it was truly a labor of love. It's something that all of us felt very strongly about, and I just want to recognize it wasn't just us, the core group. There was a number of other individuals who were involved in putting together information. The Nashua River Watershed, which was concerned about the Mulpus Brook, was very instrumental in helping us put together, the website and disseminating information. And Elizabeth Ainsley Campbell and Mike Emerzio were very, very helpful to the group, and I thank everybody for their efforts, and obviously Brandon did a tremendous job in getting the public to be aware of what was going on with the public access channel. I want to thank the public access channel for all of their efforts, and especially I want to thank the townspeople, because it is something that I'm very happy that will be preserved in perpetuity for future generations, and I really thank everyone who came out and supported the acquisition. Anything else?
The only other thing I'd note, in addition to that success, the items that were approved by bylaw, either zoning or the general bylaw changes, the zoning bylaw is effective upon town meeting action, subject to the Attorney General's approval. The general bylaws are not effective until the Attorney General notifies the town clerk that they're effective. So our appointment process with the PAC will be subject to that process. So the town clerk will be submitting that soon, I'm sure.
Okay.
Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to state that I've heard from several residents that in addition to just the Lane property warrant article, the entire town meeting went very smoothly, was very transparent. A lot of data was presented. The two screens were helpful. People felt they understood exactly what they were voting on, and I'd like to acknowledge the town manager and her staff for putting that together.
Absolutely.
You're here.
Great job again. Thank you. Okay. Okay, I guess we will jump to minutes. We have the minutes of April 29th. And we have a payroll warrant in the amount of $607,380.55. And a payroll deduction warrant in the amount of $139,013.72. And an accounts payable warrant in the amount of $253,228.73. Okay. Does anyone have any action file issues?
Do announcements.
Okay. Okay, I will jump to announcements, or go back to announcements, actually. A reminder that yard waste days are going on now. Guidelines for disposal of yard waste can be found on the Lunenburg website, or you can contact the Selectmen's office. It is open Saturdays, April 26th through May 31st, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., located off of Youngs Road. Acceptable material is grass clippings, bark mulch, wood chips, leaves, brush, with a diameter not to exceed 3 inches. But you cannot bring containers or bags. It is open to Lunenburg residents only. Travel is permitted only on the town easement. There is no trespassing on the Tri-Town Landing development. The construction on the Townsend Harbor Mulpus Road intersection is going to begin on Monday, May 19th, and it's to reconfigure the intersection of Townsend Harbor Road and Mulpus. It's estimated to take 2 to 3 weeks to complete. Traffic delays are expected. Please seek an alternate route if you can. Representative Benson is holding office hours here in the district. They are scheduled for Tuesday, May 6th, which is tonight, from 5:30 to 6:30, so they have occurred. Tuesday, May 13th, from 5:30 to 6:30 here in the Joseph F. Bellata Meeting Room, and Tuesday, May 27th, from 6 to 7 in the Boxborough Town Hall in the Morse Hilberg Meeting Room. And that is it for announcements. And we can now meet with the Library Board of Trustees.
Thank you. Jeannie Raboyne, 395 Page Street, also Chair of the Board of Trustees, Lunenburg Public Library, as well as,
Richard Mayu, 88 Laurel Lane.
sorry.
Lars Widstrand of Sunny Hill Road.
And on April 21st, I emailed Bob Ebersol, the representative from the Select Board, to the Board of Trustees with a attached letter from Joanne McQuaid, who is also on the Board of Trustees, requesting that she resign her position as a trustee due to personal time constraints. And pursuant with Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 11, the board should give the Lunenburg Selectmen written notice of the resignation, and I did so in terms of the email and the attached letter. And then Ms. Speidel was very good at giving us time today to confirm our meeting, and then put forth the name of Gare Thompson of Lunenburg, former trustee, to step in and continue with the rest of Joanne's time, which would be the next 2 years. And we're just looking for an agreement with that.
Okay. Madam Town Manager, did you have any
I'm
comments?
just confirming, the trustees are a 7-member board.
Right, and because we received the notice late, I sent an email out immediately to the board on May 1st saying we need to be here, and we could only get 3 people tonight.
We're actually a 6-member board because Joanne is
Joanne has gone, right.
Unfortunately, we don't have a quorum. We have been advised by council that if it is a 7-member board, we need to have 4 members in order to have a quorum. So I don't know that we can take action tonight because we need to have a quorum of both boards.
Even if one has resigned?
Yes,
and
unfortunately.
So we have 6?
Yes, even if there is a vacancy, which is the reason that is why we changed the PAC bylaw, because it became apparent during that process that if you have a 7-member board, and unless you have 4 members present, regardless of vacancies, you cannot meet.
Okay, that might be difficult because Joanne is gone. We have another member who's on vacation. And then our 2 new trustees, well, we think they will be coming on after the election, won't be coming on until the 22nd. So we would like to have somebody in place before that.
Unfortunately, I think our hands are tied legally unless you have a different...
No, I just went back to look at the charter, and it requires that the appointment be made by joint vote. So we have to have a quorum of both boards
You'd actually,
present.
we would have a meeting on the 20th of May. The election is the 17th.
Right.
So your new members could be sworn in between the 17th and the 20th. So you could possibly get 4 members to come to that meeting if we have room on that agenda. So it would be a delay of 2 weeks for the appointment.
And unfortunately, we don't have an alternative. We have to have a quorum of both boards in order to make that joint decision.
Okay, that's fine. Perhaps in the future, you could let us know a little bit ahead of time, so we could try to get our people to...
Well, we had assumed, it was on the agenda as a joint meeting of the Library Board of Trustees, so we had assumed that there would be a quorum here
But
tonight.
we weren't notified
so.
till May 1st, And this
Okay.
is, and so if I can't get a hold of my trustees in time, perhaps, we could be notified a little bit sooner.
Do we want to go ahead and tentatively put it on for the 20th, so that way,
Yes, that's what we will do for the 20th. We will do that.
Okay, so that's our meeting on the 20th?
Yes.
Okay, so we will put it on our agenda for the 20th, and if you could notify, and if for some reason you aren't unable to have a quorum that night, just let us know.
And it'd be good if you actually post that meeting through the open meeting law.
We did.
Yes, it was
Okay.
posted.
but
That was
then-
posted
right,
as you saw at 10:59 at night. I sent it knowing that the next day that nobody would be in
Good.
town hall to post it, but I did the very best I could.
Good. Thank you.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Okay, back to current business. Item number 2 is the progress on the Board of Selectmen goals and the town manager goals. And that is within our packet. The town manager has distributed our copies of our goals as well as an update on her goals. And this information is going to be useful to, useless. Okay, that was a slip. Useful to us in putting together the evaluations. I apologize. Did we want to go over it, or did you want to go through
I'm happy to go through them if you want.
what the board would like that? Okay.
Okay.
So if you could run through the town manager's goal progress.
So there are goals in three different areas: personnel, financial, and operations, and you have a number of objectives under each one of them. We talked about the last time that it would be helpful if there was something in between no progress and substantive progress, so I tried to put the X's on sometimes they're in the middle, sometimes they're on the left, sometimes they're on the right. So the first objective under personnel is to institute annual performance evaluations with department-specific metrics for each level in the organization. And I've got substantive progress on the right side. And the comment is that this is in process, and I made a note that I still seem to be spending more time on disciplinary matters and grievances rather than being on the proactive side. Obviously would prefer to be more proactive, but it's difficult with the level of activity in personnel, and not having a personnel director makes it somewhat challenging at times. The second is to implement periodic department head and staff meetings to facilitate communication and teamwork. I did check completed, and again, maybe next year we can have a little bit of a different setup here. We do have quarterly staff meetings. Next meeting is actually next week. Next is formulate system to document performance issues and specific corrective actions. I did mark that as complete. Each of the collective bargaining agreements and the salary admin plan identify the steps that we have to follow on performance issues. Next is to explore training and educational seminars. I did put completed as well. Regular participation in Maya training programs. Department managers are regularly attending association meetings and trainings for their professional associations. We also do have a number of committee members who are participating in training. The planning board regularly attends training sessions. The finance committee, sometimes members of this board attend as well. Next is complete job descriptions for each position in the organizational chart. I did mark substantive progress. At this point, we're about 60% complete with drafting updated job descriptions. This is something that I was trying to contract with somebody, and it just never worked out. So I have somebody in-house working on those. I do expect that we will complete all of them by the end of this fiscal year. In some cases, there's a process that we need to follow in order to get those approved. So with some unions, they have the opportunity or participate in the process on signing off on job descriptions. So as those union contracts come up, we will go through that process. And the last under personnel is to establish departmental goals and objectives, and I marked substantive progress. This is in process to be formalized through annual performance reviews. All of the annual performance reviews are with the department managers are scheduled for June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And that will be to establish progress this year and goals for fiscal 2015. So the second goal is financial, and there are 3 objectives. The first is to implement zero-based and performance-based budgeting. I've marked substantive progress. There are some performance measures in both the fiscal 14 and 15 budget. This is something that I'd like to continue to refine and make more quantitative as we go forward. Next, provide quarterly budget updates with the executive summary to be co-presented with the town accountant. We have been doing that on a regular basis. At the last meeting or the meeting before, we presented the third quarter reports. The third quarter financials will be presented to the Finance Committee on at this week's meeting. And then third, construct a budget retrospective by department of historical funding and staffing, tasks performed or eliminated with outsourcing impact note. I marked substantive progress. This is something that is in process as I have the opportunity. It's easy for maybe the first 5 years to go back, but further than that, or maybe it's easy for the last 7 because I've been here for 7. But it's more difficult as we go back, and I think the data that people are really interested in seeing is probably 10 plus years old, so I've had to go back into annual town reports, and I have found some inconsistencies, and I'm sure it's just the way I'm interpreting it, but it's taken me longer than I would have hoped. And then goal 3 is operations. Several objectives here. The first is operational review and analysis with efficiency improvement plan or affirmation of existing operations. This is something that is done on an ongoing basis and continual, and I just made a note of the land use director as the most recent review and implementation there. Next is develop project planning for reporting for annual tasks or special reports. And I mentioned the last time that we went through this that I wasn't 100% clear on this, and I think if it remains next year, it would be helpful maybe to clarify it a bit. There really isn't any one-size-fits-all type report. We've done a lot of work this year with DPW in particular with their work logs and the activities related to storms. There are lots of reports that public safety puts together, and we could do something with other development-related activities, but it would be helpful to do something to provide a little more detail there. Next is plan for future positions, position additions, consolidations, and/or eliminations. Again, this is something that is done on an ongoing basis, and it's a continuous, always looking at continuous improvement. This is done formally through the budget process, and also I could have noted as retirements come up or other vacancies, I found that has been a good opportunity to implement some change in order to make our organization more efficient. Facilities maintenance plan. We do have a draft plan. It does need to be finalized and probably add some meat to it. We will incorporate the data from the Building Reuse Committee. Codification of bylaws. We do have a contract with General Code, that is the company that we are working with. The codification process is in review. It's anticipated to be completed in 9 to 12 months from now. It's a very long process, but I did just get an update from the town clerk on the activities, what documents the company is reviewing. So it's taking longer than I had expected, but I think we'll have a good product, or I know we'll have a good product when we're finished. And then last is IT policies. In process, not as much progress as I had hoped. Hopefully over the summer, we'll be able to make quite a bit of progress, but it's, with the level of staffing that we have in IT, it's difficult to do much extra during the school year. So this is something I think that we can catch up on over the summer, and with the addition of the additional hours that were approved at the annual town meeting in IT, hopefully we will be able to make good progress over the summer.
Okay, are there any questions, comments? Okay. I think it makes sense just to go over our own, just to run through our own goals, and we can put this on a future agenda. Finish review of the Board of Selectmen Policies Manual, define hearing procedures, appointments, reappointments, and performance review measures. I think we've partially completed that. We've made a big dent in the Board of Selectmen Policies Manual. There are a number of policies, however, that I think we need to go back and revisit and add. So I think we've made substantive progress on that, but we need to finalize that. A list of town-owned land and chapter properties. I think I would say that that's complete through the open space, and we are moving towards that prioritization list so that we can be proactive. Economic development plan, that's something, that's been on our radar, but we haven't flushed out, and I think it may be something we want to do in conjunction with the planning board, or how we want to approach that, but that's certainly an item that we should put on a future agenda.
And with the hiring of the land use
Director. Exactly, because that will be a big component. So I would anticipate that over, in the fall, that would be something we can really tackle. Improve communication between committees and departments. I don't know that the chairs' meetings were reinitiated.
They have not been.
Okay. So we are having the periodic department updates at the televised Board of Selectmen meetings, although we haven't done that. But I think we were all entrenched in the budget process, and that was being done at the Finance Committee meetings. But maybe something we want to look at.
Well, we did have the DPW come last week. For
right.
the
So we are making progress on that.
I think he's set the standard for the other departments to do the presentation. So.
The town website, we talked about putting together a committee, establishing a website policy committee, and I guess I would ask the town manager, given what you just talked about with the IT policies, is that something you would like us to continue with, or do you think that's something that can be done by the IT department?
I think it's both, because some of this, like the first one where you're talking about policy for, maybe minimum content in minutes and agendas. That's, while an IT person could do some research and see if other communities have that, we certainly can do that. That's something that this board would have to decide. And I think it would be, unless we can find something that somebody else has, I think it might be difficult for them to draft something out, because they're not working with this on a regular basis. But one of the reasons for trying to bring back some additional IT hours was specifically to have that person available for the website. So I think it's still going to the board's still going to have some involvement in this.
Okay, and as part of the town manager's evaluation, which I think the chairman would like by next Tuesday, is that correct? Yes. He would. Now, I don't know. I was talking with the town manager today, and I was trying to schedule my meeting with her, and I know that with town meeting, all of us haven't done that yet, so it may be aggressive, but if you could make a point to schedule a meeting with the town manager to review the document so that the chair can put it all together before the election, that would be very helpful.
Or at least if anybody's leaving this board, it might be helpful to see.
Just in case there's anybody leaving the board.
In case there's anybody that falls into that category.
Okay, and as part of that process, we're going to need to revisit our goals. So we should start thinking about what you want to see on the board goals for next year.
Can I weigh in on that too?
Absolutely. You can give us a to-do
Be a
list.
long, long
You can give
summer.
us a to-do list before you leave. Don't know that we'll put it
You can
on there, but we'll
spread
take
it
your
immediately.
feedback. Okay. Discussion on requesting planning board to include stipulations on Elmwood Road subdivision relative to earth removal. And did you want me to take that, or did you want to go first? I spoke with the town manager today. This is something I had brought to the board. As you guys are aware, there's a subdivision going on at the old sugar, I can't remember the name of it. The sugar shack. It's not the sugar shack.
Ewan's Sugar
Ewan's
House.
Ewan's Sugar House. And there's going to be a subdivision there. It's been approved by the planning board, although I don't know that the findings and directives have been issued as of yet. One of the concerns that I have is they're removing 15,000 cubic yards of gravel from this property. It's a very substantive operation. It will require hundreds of trucks. And I know that the planning board, in order to address some concerns, has stipulated how the traffic has to flow from that property, or has talked about that. But one of the things I asked, initially the zoning officer had thought that an earth removal permit would be required. And I had mentioned at a planning board meeting that I thought an earth removal permit would be required. Subsequent to that, the applicant went to to the zoning officer and informed him that under our bylaw, an earth removal permit is not required if it is part of a subdivision plan. So it is exempt from requiring an earth removal permit. I have concerns as an individual about this. Historically, and this goes back many, many years ago, but I have seen situations in which earth removal permit operations have caused concerns in residential areas. The Board of Health had hearings, the Selectmen had hearings. There were a number of stipulations put on past permits when it became an issue with residences. My concern is this is a significant operation in a very dense residential area. And ultimately, what I would like to see happen is an earth removal permit be issued, because then it can be vetted through our zoning officer, who's also our earth removal permit reviewer, and our DPW director for traffic concerns. So ultimately, that's what I would like to see. Now, I don't know whether or not that's a possibility, but the question came up of what would this board like to see, and if in fact, we want to ask the planning board to incorporate anything in their findings and directives relative to this subdivision approval.
I mean, I would say that we would ask or suggest that they include the basic stipulations we have on every earth removal permit, the hours a day they can operate, days of the week they can operate. It'd be good to get an idea of where the earth is going, where it's being hauled, and make sure it's routed appropriately, not down the back road, not down, onto the main streets. And
That would be very helpful, Joanna, if you could. Sure, Joe, if you want to speak, that would be great. If you
What
want to.
happened when Joanna Bellotta, 362 Sunset Lane, chairman of the planning board. When we were at the meeting, Paula had brought up the gravel permit. They came back and said, no, we don't need a gravel permit due to the bylaw. So I had asked Attorney Bard if, in fact, I could have them still do some of the components of that gravel. And he said, yes, in your findings you can. So we did number 2, the applicant shall obtain approval from the planning board prior to removal of any earth, soil, gravel. 3, the applicant shall utilize Route 2A for truck removal of overburden. And 3, the applicant shall fill out the form and removal of overburden on a weekly basis while the project is ongoing, and submit that to the planning office as well. So those were the 3 things we've added to that. So if there's more that you're looking to, then by all means, we can list that and bring it to the board on Monday.
Well, I guess, some of my concerns are hours of operation. The other concerns I have is depending on the volume that they're removing, there can be a significant dust hazard. Mm-hmm. And I know in the past when we've had dust concerns because of an extensive operation, and this was going back years ago, but there were requirements to keep the dust down by wetting, the piles, wetting the roadway to minimize dust impact.
Yeah, Keating's
And,
does
and Keating's does that, and that was actually part of their permit requirement. And I know at one point there was a concern about Powell stone and gravel, and that came up as well. But unfortunately, without going through the earth removal process, and Carrie asked me about this today, and, I would like to get some feedback from Mike Savageau, from Jack Rodquins, because we're not experts. But I do know that it goes beyond just the traffic, the hours of operation, dust mitigation. And ultimately, I guess the question that I would have is it possible to require them to get an earth removal permit? Because in number 2, you say, shall obtain approval from the planning board prior to removal. Can we put that they must obtain an earth removal permit? No, because they're exempt. Okay.
So that's why we can add bullets within the findings, do this, do this, do this, but to have them do the permit, that one sentence frees them from that.
Okay. Well, personally, then
So we
I would
can
like
add-
hours of operation.
We can add the hours, and again, my board, has to decide that.
Yeah,
But
right.
Monday, I can bring it to the board to add the hours of operation and the dust mitigation to see that component of that.
Are there,
The,
Mr. Ebersol?
under if you go to the earth removal ordinance, which is, it's section 10 of that control of operation, grading, seeding's not going to be, that's taken care of through the rebuilding, but it talks about methods of removal, location, use of structures, hours of operation, routes of transportation, control of dust, disposition of waste material incident to the operation, including swamps and things like that. So you may want to, if you refer to that, not say get a permit, but you say you have to provide for methods to control dust, erosion control, the route. So
Disposal of the waste and transportation routes.
I think if you have,
Yeah, we did the transportation.
that's the really substantive part of the bylaw that
Right.
you're trying to control.
So I think that's what we as a board would like to see. Anyone else want to chime in? And I don't know whether it makes sense to put together basically just the list that Mr. Ebersol just went through, either in an email or a memo. Would that be helpful to you if we send something over?
That's in your policies, right? That's
Right.
not in the plan.
Right. So if
you
we
could
kind of
send
just
those.
highlighted
I don't know if
those.
Marjorie has them. If you could send them, those would be great, and then we can make that recommendation at Monday's meeting, because I understand they're coming back on Monday.
Okay,
So
that
we
would be
can
great.
make a recommendation to add those other subsets.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Okay, thank you for coming forward, and we will send out a memo.
Yeah, but this
to
is what
Carrie.
was in the original.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Discuss, approve requiring a DOR, certificate of good standing, for any business collecting meals tax.
That's something that I submitted. Recently, we had a property in town that is no longer in business that collects the meals tax, and the meals tax will not be collected until such time as the state actually collects it, so it won't come to the state, come to us. So similar to what we require for all our license holders before the end of the year, require that they pay the town taxes. For $25, businesses can go online to the Massachusetts Department of Revenue and request a certificate of good standing, which means that they paid all their outstanding taxes. If we added that to the process, I'm only asking it for those facilities that actually have collect meals tax. I'm not talking about for any other properties, because that you could do it, but that doesn't benefit us for anything else.
If the board were to do that, what is the process that we would do that? Do we need to add it to our policy on licensing?
I think you should add it to your policy on licensing, and I think we should give a certain amount of notice to each of the people, each of the businesses that would be required to follow the policy.
I would suggest that maybe we schedule a workshop on board policies again,
Right.
and have this be one of the things to incorporate it.
I would
not do
agree, and
this
I would
separately.
agree, and if we could have, since this is something you've brought to the forefront, if you could have some draft language of how you would incorporate it and where you would incorporate it in the policies. And maybe, once we've set the date for that workshop, all of us can kind of have we can have before that workshop, we should have a discussion on what policies we want to focus on, because rather than trying to look through the whole thing, if we can pick, a couple of policies we want to work on and finalize. We've made a lot of progress. I don't want to minimize what we've done, but I want to, anything that is still outstanding that we want to revisit. And when the town manager had sent out the last policies we worked on, there was a list of things that still needed to be addressed. So maybe we can prioritize that list at one of our near meetings, possibly next week or the following, and then schedule a workshop. Okay. Committee reports. Board of Health.
Board of Health met last night, and the topic is nitrogen aggregation, and apparently under the state law, they allowed, and the state regulated, that if somebody had a small lot, they could take another piece of land and consider that part of the lot for the purposes of nitrogen loading. Similar to smokestack emissions that somebody can buy the right to pollute someplace else. Apparently, the state has given up that duty and turned it back to local boards of health. Our Board of Health does not want to do that in town, and so they wanted to see whether they had to change their regulations. They do not believe they have to, because their Section 8 of their regulations requires a system to be on the lot to be served.
So can I just ask a question? So you're talking about a lot that's not contiguous.
That's correct.
Okay, so if it's a lot that's separated, but obviously if it's a lot that's contiguous, then it meets the requirement.
That's right.
So this is a lot that is not contiguous with the primary parcel.
That's right.
Okay.
So it was just an interesting thing that when the state used to regulate it and approve it, they turned it back over to the local boards of health. Our Board of Health, I personally agree with this decision, believes that they shouldn't have to do that the property should support the system that it's on, because that's the reality of the system. So they're not don't have to change their regulations. All their other operations last night were their routine approval of septic systems and reports.
Okay, building reuse?
Yes, the Building Reuse Committee met last night. Several activities. Ron Albert was elected vice chair of the committee to replace Pat Slattery, who retired from the committee. We continued our discussion of the role of zoning, the planning board, the historical commission, and various other boards and commissions of the town that we kind of need to work together with as part of the building reuse process. Damon McQuaid, who's on the Building Reuse Committee and representing the Planning Board, but also sits on the Historic Commission, is going to take the lead to try to engage those two groups. And I'd like to encourage all the various committees and groups in town to kind of partner with us on this project. There's a kind of a visioning exercise we talk about in terms of helping the various constituents and stakeholders in the process come together and help us build a vision of what the village zone or the center of town would look like, and also review the fiscal aspects of that. Just some kind of facts. The Building Reuse Committee is responsible for 6 properties at the moment that comprise 143,000 square feet that sit on 28.7 acres of property, and they have an annual cost to the town to operate in the neighborhood of $180,000, and that's not including any capital costs that would be required to maintain those properties, or any demolition costs now or in the future that could be in the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. So we have some fairly aggressive plans and timeframes, and what we'd like to do is get this work done to the point where we could communicate the vision as part of the town meeting process. The aggressive members of the group think that we can do it in the fall of 2014. Those less aggressive hope to do it in the spring of 2015. But in any event, I envisioned it something pretty similar to the proposal on the Lane property, where it's very visible, all the pluses, the minuses, all the factors, very transparent, and gives the townspeople and the various constituencies and boards around the town to kind of weigh in on it.
So I really appreciate the work that the Building Reuse Committee is doing, and I think you guys are doing a great job. But I guess I just have a question about the process, because we had you guys did a great presentation on what the recommendations were, for example, for this building and the Ritter and et cetera. And I don't know that this board, although we saw the presentation, I don't know that we ever discussed those recommendations. And I know it seems, and I guess this is a question, it seems that your primary focus right now is on, you know, the reuse of the Brooks House, for example, and the elementary school, at the Passios building. Where are we with flushing out, for example, the costs of renovating the town hall and an actual plan? Are you working on that as well, or are you awaiting for feedback from the board on those recommendations that you've already brought forward?
At the moment, we feel that we're putting data together to bring something to the board.
Okay.
And the renovation of any buildings that we recommend that we continue to utilize, we have to kind of put a plan together that includes what that's going to cost and where the money's going to come from. So they're all interrelated in terms of any proceeds or revenue generated by reuse of other properties, hopefully would be earmarked as the funding mechanism to do renovations to properties that have a future life. But I don't know, although we've made recommendations and we believe we have the approval to keep working.
Oh, absolutely.
I think the decision processes will come as we have data points that make sense.
Okay, so you're continuing to flush out the details associated with those initial recommendations?
Correct.
Okay.
So just to add to that, I mean, Damon had an interesting idea of doing a visioning exercise, maybe to the library, something like that, bring in photos and information from the past lives of what the town center used to look like. And he was talking about working with the Historical Commission, Historical Society, because they've got a better data bank of old photos, et cetera. And just to get people thinking about what used to be here, because this town center wasn't always churches, municipal buildings, and a couple houses. There used to be a lot more to it. So that'll be interesting to see. And it can't stress enough the zoning. I mean, everything that we're talking about doing something new with, you know, we talk about economic growth in this town, economic development. Every single parcel we're talking about is currently zoned residential A.
I couldn't agree more. And I know the planning board is working on the village district bylaw, but it's imperative that we move that forward and that we really look at zoning. And we look at zoning of all of the center and look at where it makes sense for, you know, commercial enterprises, and that we need to move that forward as soon as we can.
Right, and it has to be a lot of discussion, because of course some people will be for it, some will be against it.
Right.
We need to kind of work through that collaboratively and come to something that's going to work for everybody, and hopefully come up with zoning that'll be flexible, because as we develop one thing, it's going to drive new development that's going to change a use maybe down the road.
Right.
So hopefully it'll be an inclusive, and we'll see where it takes us. But there's a lot to get done, there's a lot to get introduced to the townspeople, which makes a fall town meeting aggressive. I mean, I would love to see it happen, because the sooner we can get that done, the better off we'll be. But
I gotta be honest, I think that's too aggressive. I don't know that we can get the public involvement and get the public participation that I think we're gonna need for something like that. But who knows?
That may be very true. One of the things that I think to balance that thought is that although one potential end state is when the new high school is built, completed, and the ribbon is cut, there's an awful lot of work that can be done between now and then.
Right.
And we want to make sure that we make that work happen, take decisions when we need to along the way, work on, you know, zoning, work on historical concerns, put it out to bid so that we get the most competitive possibilities. All of that, and you know, tempered with my conservative colleague to make sure we have a good plan before we do one-off transactions. At the same time, I think we can work aggressively in the meantime towards something that may in fact be 3 years off in terms of its total completion.
Right. There's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done, and I absolutely agree. We have to move forward aggressively. And, we've got to research the market as well. I mean, we've got to research, what the market will bear, what enterprise types of enterprises those buildings will support, and there's a lot of outreach that needs to happen, as well as outreach to the community to find out what they will bear. So.
Correct.
Can I just make one point? I think I might have had something to do with the fall town meeting, putting that bug in people's ears, and what I was thinking and hoping was the renovation of this building, putting together a plan, just because it seems to be, we had a lot of success with DPW when we brought that plan to town meeting outside of the annual town meeting process, and I was hoping that we could do the same with this building, assuming that we're not going to do anything with this building other than renovate it for municipal space. Is there any chance that that would be ready?
Could always be ready, but it's a matter of
Could be.
funding.
There's already plans that they presented during that way back when they were originally going to renovate the building and add on and do the floors and everything else like that. So I think that was the thing that Pat Slattery brought to the discussion. So, and whether that's the right plan today is a different discussion. But
It's definitely not.
And so, but somebody could look at the building and say, all right, based on the square footage, it's going to cost X, and but I think you could still have the discussions about what that would mean as relates to assuming Ritter goes away, assuming Brooks House, so, and where will all those people go? And then we talked about the records and other stuff like that. So all of those things, the Building Reuse Committee has on their agenda and has to get things done. And the question becomes, whether it's this fall town meeting or maybe next year's fall town meeting, because you've got to get. You can't go to the town meeting without something that's enough there to actually get something moved, but at the same time, you want to make sure that what there is substantively working for everyone.
Well, and I will be honest, I have some concerns about using this building and moving everyone from the Ritter over, and I think I voiced them during the meeting, is how it will work logistically, about public meeting space. I think I need a lot more level of detail before I can, support that.
Sure.
And I think that one of the things that hasn't been in the discussion for building reuse, because we had an agreement with John Jewell and Associates, that agreement is now expired, I believe. And they're coming to our next meeting?
Next
Meeting at 6 to talk about that building. If in fact we decide we don't want to move forward with that project, the Eagle Heights project, we're going to need to determine what we want to do with that building. But every year that it sits vacant, we're seeing deterioration, I believe, in talking to our facilities director, and I am very concerned with continuing to hold that with no end date in sight, and I think it's something that we may want to entertain. Does that make sense for town offices? I don't know. But the Building Reuse Committee hasn't looked at that building because they weren't asked to.
Correct.
And so that's something I think we need to talk about next week, is whether or not we want to incorporate that into the mix.
Absolutely. And I think that our plan is to come many times in many steps forward with feasibility plans for several actions, but to bring with that a price tag and let us make, both as a board and as a town, through town meeting, make those decisions on, how do you fund what it is we want to do. We're assuming we probably are going to take on the old primary school as part of our charter, but next week's meeting will kind of determine that.
Okay.
So there's subgroups looking at this building that'll come up with new plans. Actually, the plans that were developed, you referred to back in the day, I mean, they were lovely. They were beautiful. Additions in the back and atriums and open spaces to the couple floors up. It was fantastic. But
Like it.
Sounds good. And if this was Weston, it would be awesome. But that it's not. So we'll have to look at that. But that's part of the process. The wreckage retention is going to be a big deal for what we can do with this space, because we've got a lot of space dedicated to records that really should be electronic and maybe should be off-site, so that was all part of, there's a bunch of different moving parts that'll make this happen. And as far as the old primary school, you know, we'll have to look at the size, which is probably too big for town hall, marketability, this building, that building, there's a bunch of different things we'll have to look at, but we've got a ways to go, but we got a good start.
Yeah. And I believe a lot of this is already on our radar, and now it's just good old-fashioned staff work to bring it to a point where we can make some good decisions.
Okay, great. Okay, capital planning.
No report.
Okay, finance committee.
Yeah, actually, the capital planning group is probably on hiatus until the budget cycle starts again next time around.
Okay, finance committee.
No report. They're meeting Thursday evening. It will not be televised, but they'll meeting here.
Okay, library board of trustees.
No report. They're meeting next week.
Okay, MPO. I had relayed to town meeting and to all of you at our meeting prior to town meeting that at the MPO meeting, again, there was more discussion about how projects are going to fall out, and I had relayed that, but I did tell you I was going to meet with Brad Harris to talk about the Sterling project and talk about the TIP process as a whole. I did that on the Friday before town meeting. The funding for the fiscal 2018 TIP is extremely tight because of this Sterling project. And basically, it's built in, instead of one intersection being dealt with, now they're looking at potentially 3 to 4 intersections and exchanges, and that's why the project, and that's because of Mass DOT safety concerns, and that's why the project is escalated. At the MPO meeting, Brad Harris, who's the transportation director of MRPC, was asked to put together some other scenarios, because frankly the 4 that he had put together weren't very well received. So he was in the process of doing that, and when I met with him on Friday, in looking at the 2 new scenarios he prepared, he's moved Summer Street out to 2018, and I questioned why that was, because we've all been relying on fiscal 17. And what he indicated to me was that when he went to TIP Day, Mass DOT said that because of funding concerns for the design, Summer Street wasn't moving forward, and so they had recommended that he find another project of a similar price tag to incorporate. I assured him that the town of Lunenburg is moving that project forward. We are lobbying for the funds of the transportation bond bill. However, in the event that we don't receive them, the town will move this project forward, and requested that he relook at putting us back in the fiscal 2017 TIP. Apparently, the Sterling project is not even yet at 25% design. So we are farther along in the process than that project. So that was the argument that I made, is that we are moving forward. Did the utilities meeting on the Summer Street corridor happen, or is it scheduled?
That's Friday.
Okay, so there is a meeting with Mass DOT on the Summer Street, and funds have been allocated to support that meeting. There is talk about scheduling a public hearing in the near future. So I explained to him that this project does have legs, it is moving forward, and please look at putting it back in 17. He agreed to do that. Now, whether or not he's going to be able to do that, I don't know, but he agreed that he would look at that, and given the fact that we are moving it forward, we are farther ahead than the Sterling project. I had an opportunity to talk to him about a couple other things. Chase Road, it will be incorporated into the appendix of the TIP. This is a new project to the TIP process, and hasn't yet been scored, and is really in the preliminary stages, so it will be in the appendix. So the hope is that in the event that another project doesn't meet the timelines that are required, or that funding becomes available, we can move that project forward. There is a meeting on Friday with Mass DOT at 10 o'clock. They're coming out to look at Chase Road and potentially some other projects. One of the things that he did point out to me, and I relayed this to Kerry and Jack today, is that virtually every project is expected to accommodate bike and pedestrian access now because of requirements from Green Dot and other highway safety programs. So if we're not going to incorporate those aspects, then we're going to need to get a waiver on that. So that's something we'll be talking about with Mass DOT on Friday. The TIP process, I had some questions about how projects are moved forward in the TIP and how they're rated, and it's you guys all know me well enough now to know that I read everything, And when we're voting on the MPO, there's not a lot to read. It's just a basic project summary. But like, for example, Sterling, how do you go from $1 million to $6 million? And there's no explanation of how that occurred. So one of the things I relayed to him is we're expected to come and look at this list and vote on it, but there's no meat behind what you're voting on. So what he indicated is that the MJTC meeting, which is the Montechusett Joint Transportation Committee, which is really more of a vetting process before it comes to the MPO, that he would try to incorporate more overviews of the projects at the May 21st meeting that we're going to be considering for the 15-18 tip. And he said, moving forward, he'll try to do that as part of the MPO process. Because honestly, we're given a list of projects that we vote on, but there's no real discussion about what they are. Road reconstruction, this is a question that's been kind of bouncing around between Kerry and myself and Jack, and knowing that there are 25 federal aid eligible roads, is a repaving or reconstruction project eligible for the TIP? Short answer is yes. There's no minimum dollar amount for a project, and especially if it's considered what's called a book job, which means it doesn't require that extensive engineering because of safety improvements. The first step in that project development process is to talk with Mass DOT. So if we're considering paving projects, I can't, say yes, they would be considered, but it's certainly worth having a conversation because they are considered eligible for funding. The Unified Planning Work Program,
Pardon me, is there a plan for us to have that conversation?
I will be there Friday.
Okay.
The Unified Planning Work Program, it's a really great program that I don't know that we take advantage of enough. And there's a couple projects that are going on in towns that have taken advantage that I thought would be of interest and something we could use as a community. And I've actually relayed some of this information to the planning board via email as well to the chair. The town of Lancaster and Harvard are both taking advantage of studies. Harvard's taking advantage of a multimodal operations study, so they're looking at ways to look at their town center to assess vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle flows with the ultimate goal of improving livability and accessibility of town center. Now, this is at no cost, so MRPC is incorporating that. And that may be something, when we're talking about our village center, it may be something we want to take advantage of in the future. Town of Lancaster is doing a complete street study and analysis, and that's, again, to assess bike and walkability of the town of Lancaster and also complete streets to school. So they're going to be looking at school routes, truck access, ADA compliance issues, and they'll be recommending potential projects to enhance the community through this. And again, that was at no cost to Lancaster. They just basically submitted a letter requesting these studies. MRPC is in the process of doing a data collection and analysis program, and they're looking at places to consider for traffic studies, and we do this on a regular basis, but if we have specific requests, we should send them to them. One of the things that I thought the planning board might be interested in is Leominster Shirley Road, because it's been a great topic of discussion at the planning board meetings. They could certainly take a look at that under the existing UPWP, and they would do traffic count, speed analysis, and vehicle classification, depending on what the town's looking for. If we do want to pursue something like that, we should be sending a letter to the MRPC requesting that service. And finally, under local technical assistance, that's basically a catch-all, and it's dedicated to providing quick and effective responses to handle special short-term issues and projects that will assist communities and DOT in improving the region's transportation system. So if we have anything on our radar that we'd like to get funding for, there is funding currently available under the Local Technical Assistance Program, which is separate than a DLTA grant, which we have been taking advantage of. But there are several programs that are available that we could be utilizing. And finally, under GIS, we have 8 hours of free GIS assistance that we are eligible for, and I don't know whether we're utilizing that or not, but he recommended if we would like to utilize that 8 hours to send an email to Jason Stanton at MRPC, and they would be happy to assist us.
And part of that might be useful for the sewer department to put the sewer ties in, that some of which are still in Jack's mind of where things are, and some of the cards that could go onto the GIS system.
So Okay, Planning Board. The Planning Board meeting on Monday, April 28th, there was a lot of discussion on 305 Leominster Shirley Road. This is the speed/traffic issues that have been raised. Chief Marino was there and talked with the board, about the roadway. The end of the discussion was looking at installing some warning signs and potentially looking at the speeds in that area and traffic, and where the planning board takes that, I'm not sure. But he did caution that if we do a speed analysis, while we might believe it should be a 30-mile-per-hour zone, we might end up finding the zone should be higher. So, there's some good and bad of doing analysis and studies. But he did come away with some recommendations, gave the planning board some recommendations, and the planning board took that under advisement. 265 Pleasant Street, the solar, the applicant was there, and the bottom line is they need these, in order to be live on June 30th, which is their requirement, from a financial standpoint as well as some regulatory standpoints, they have to be online June 30th. And in order to achieve that, they need to utilize the poles that are there. They're willing to move the one that was in the center of the field and move it and try to put it to the side. And the abutters, some of the concerned abutters were there, as well as Unitil was there. And bottom line is everyone agreed that allowing the poles temporarily makes sense, but at the same time, them to look at the possibility of moving all of the services underground. So they did give approval to utilize the poles temporarily until December 29th. But in the end, during that process, they are going to be looking at moving the poles underground, the feasibility of that. In fact, they may not be able to move all of them, but they're going to be looking at it. So the planning board approved that to December 29th. On Chase Road, there are no restrictions to not have poles. This was strictly on the Pleasant Street property. Apparently there wasn't the concern of aesthetics and neighbors and where the project was. So, when we bring that pole location hearing up, that's not a concern. Fairview Road and Sunnyvale, 115 Fairview and 317 Sunny Hill Road, they signed some A&Rs on. One of the things that finally what was of interest is, I talked to you at our last meeting about that the planning board is looking at using some housing component with the additional DLTA grants that are available. They're now also going to look at incorporating parts of our planned production plan into that, because our planned production plan, which limits affordable housing, expired in 2012. So we now no longer have a planned production plan. So they're going to look at using some of those funds to try to move that forward. And I think that was the highlights of the meeting. So there were a lot of regular business, but I think those were the highlights of things. So, okay, PAC, we have no report. School Advisory Committee?
They're meeting on Thursday.
Okay, School Committee?
Meeting tomorrow night.
Okay, School Building Committee?
No report.
I guess I have a question, and I had asked this before. The peer review, do you anticipate at what point it will be ready, the plan will be ready for peer review? Okay, so you don't have an idea?
They can probably start on it now.
Okay, so has it been submitted to the planning board?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the dates.
Joanna Bellotta, 362 Sunset, Simeone, 362 Sunset Lane. Dave Warner, am I saying his name correctly?
Sure.
Called me at home, actually, last Friday, wants to have the plan ready by 5/8 to be on our agenda for 5/12. Hopefully, with the 2 weeks, we'll be able to look at that plan, send it out, and get the feedback on the 20th. No, Memorial Weekend, the 28th. What's the date of that Monday? I can't think off the top of my head. Memorial, that Monday we would meet We pushed it out to Tuesday, so hopefully we'll have it all back to them that Tuesday, if it's the 28th or 29th. I don't have a calendar in front of me.
27th, Tuesday the 27th.
Thank you, Bob. So that's what I had said to him, that we will do everything we can and hopefully get it done in that 2-week time frame.
Thank you.
Excellent.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, Sewer Commission?
No report?
Okay, and Mass Broadband, no report since Tom's not here. Okay, Town Manager reports?
I don't have any reports.
Okay, and we don't have an executive session?
No.
Okay, is there any additional public comment from the board?
One more thing. The geek that I am, I actually compared the traffic rules and regs that were proposed compared to the ones that were. I will send those out through Carrie. The biggest change that I noted was that the current rules and regs actually prohibit overnight parking from midnight to 6 a.m.
Anywhere?
Anywhere in town.
Really?
Right. So the proposed regs provide for no parking during snow emergencies, and they have eliminated the other part. So that's probably the biggest change. A lot of the other things actually just updated to the current DOT requirements. There's a lot of parking, no parking areas that I didn't realize that were there. For instance, all of Oak Ave is no parking, which I don't know why that's there. Other parts by Marshall Park, it makes sense. So there's a lot of things that I would encourage people to, as they are out and about, to look at where those things are anyways. A lot of the things still will make sense to do it, but I'll send out the things that change from one to the other. There aren't a lot of, I think they did a very good job doing it, to bringing it to current, but I think that the no parking and, for instance, this morning I was on the Honey Farms Dunkin' Donuts this morning and came out of the driveway to go on to Shirley Leominster Road, and there's a stop sign. So the stop sign is actually within the town right-of-way, I believe, because it's close to the street. When we start doing
I'm sorry, now where were you, at the new gas station?
the new gas station facing the old Padulas,
Yeah,
if you come out of that driveway going onto the road, there is a stop sign on that property.
okay.
So there are other private, so-called private driveways where there are stop signs, and the question of whether those should be regulated by us, especially since it goes onto the street, and because of the town owning land beyond the paved way, it's actually on town property. So that part would not be included in that listing. I just think that that's part of the discussion that we should have. I mean, I believe that's the right sign to be there, but if somebody pulls out without stopping, will they get a ticket? If there's an accident at fault, all the various things that flow from our traffic rules and regs.
Do you have a timeline of when you expect us to vote on that?
No, I haven't put
Okay.
that together.
Okay, okay. All right, if you can send it out to Carrie, and then she
Yep.
can distribute it, and we should be looking at that on a
Yeah, that-
near agenda, so.
I did just talk to the police chief about that, and he is still going through it as well. So, perhaps during the month of June, but I don't expect it would be ready before then.
Okay. Okay, any other comments from the board? Okay, any comments from the public? Okay, then I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.